Welcome, everybody, to Survive in Advance on the Grueling True Sports Network. I'm your co-host for Survive in Advance, Mike Goodpaster. And right now I want to welcome in my co-host, member of the 1981 national champion Indiana Hoosiers, and a member of the Indiana High School Basketball Hall of Fame, Steve Risley. How you doing, Steve?
It's not the Indiana High School Basketball Hall of Fame, just the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame.
I know, but I wanted to...
it's not. So
I wanted to lessen...
Great.
I wanted to lessen your
You diminished my already diminished career.
I know. That's what I was trying to do.
I'm doing great today. It's 75 and sunny in L.A. Let me get that out of here. The surf's up. They got 8 to 10 foot swells. They got a couple of piers closed down. I got to get my surfboard and get out. And so let's move forward. Go.
Steve, you're 60 years old. Your knees are shot. You're not surfing. All right. Today, guys, we have a special guest from the Canadian Football League. I think a quarterback who could play in the NFL today, and there's 3 or 4 guys in the CFL that can. Went from Edinburgh, kind of been through everywhere, landed in Ottawa with the Redblacks, led them to the Grey Cup this year. The game didn't turn out the way he wanted, but still, great quarterback with a great future no matter what league he plays in. Help me welcome to the show, Trevor Harris. How you doing, Trevor?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Steve, is that your dog in the background?
Yeah, they clean the streets.
Shut the
of course.
dog up.
So I'll try and quiet him down. I see if I can get my shotgun.
All right. All right, Trevor.
I don't have a shotgun. I'm not killing my dogs. I'm teasing. God, don't somebody start tweeting me on that crap, too. So.
Yeah. All right. So let's start off, Trevor. You went to Edinburgh College. How do you end up in the Canadian Football League? I know that you signed with an NFL team, you signed with an arena team, even the UFL. Just tell us kind of how this journey ended up in Canada.
You know, it's not unique, but it's a crazy story. And, I've been a part of an NFL lockout. I've been a part of a league folding during the middle of the season. I've been a part of a team getting cut as on our way to the very first game of the season, and them using replacement players because they thought the team was going to strike. And I've been released. I've been moved from different leagues. It's been a crazy journey, but right as I took a job as the O coordinator actually at Edinburgh at my alma mater, because I was just tired of the washing machine of playing pro football and moving from town to town and not having any stability. I just felt God told me I'd just needed to continue playing and continue on course. And so I found out that a team in the CFL was interested in me, but I couldn't sign with them because I was on somebody else's negotiation list. And it turned out to be the Toronto Argonauts. And so I went up and spent 4 years with them. And I had no idea about the CFL going up there. My second drive that I was ever in, I thought the coach was super mad at me because we were punting on third down. So, it was just a whole whirlwind. I was like, man, he's really waving the white flag here. He's punting on third down. Jeez.
All right, Trevor, I think you were making a joke there. I don't think you were being serious.
Well, I think it's unique he had to bring his own football to his tryout. Tell that story.
There's been plenty of times where, you have workouts here and there, and we had one in Columbus one time, and I just kind of they just said, hey, make sure you bring a football. We don't have any. And I was like, okay. And they ended up telling me I wasn't good enough to play anyway. So, there's quite a few rinky-dink stuff that happens, but so is life, right?
Yeah, and you went to Toronto, and you were with legendary quarterback Ricky Ray there, who I hear is a silent guy. So was this something where you learned more from Ricky Ray by watching him? Or am I wrong here and he's more communicative than I thought?
No, he's a really quiet guy, but Ricky and I are super close. We were roommates on the road trips, and we talked quite a bit, and he's still one of my better friends to this day. And But yeah, you don't learn a ton from Ricky by listening to him because he just doesn't really say a whole bunch. And, I'm talking install meetings, film room. I felt like I talked a little bit more than he did, which was kind of strange. But, people make a lot of, playing with Henry Burris and Ricky Ray and the legendary guys that I have. And to be honest, I've learned more from the other guys that I've played with because it's really difficult to learn from people that you don't see the game the same as or you don't play the similar way. You learn more from the people that play in the similar ways as you, and also just picking up tools from everybody's toolbox and seeing if they fit in yours. And it's just one of those things where you can learn something from just about everybody.
Yeah, and me and Steve do this show. We do an Indiana basketball show, and the one thing we always talk about is you got to have leadership on a team. From a football team, that almost invariably comes from the quarterback. And what do you think is the most important part of leadership?
Well, this is a good question because people are always we need leadership. You got to be able to lead. And what does that mean? People are always saying we need leadership. What does that mean? And simply put, it's influence. And that's the most simple and most effective, most efficient, most important part of leadership is influence. Is how are you influencing the guys around you? How are you influencing the culture of your team? How are you influencing even the coaches and how they see players? And how are you, influencing each and every portion of every part of meetings, walkthrough, games, practice, everything? And I think that's really what leadership entails. And if you can get people all pulling in the same direction, believing in the culture, believing in what you're doing, most importantly as a football team, and believing in your vision, that's really where the leadership comes full circle because you start getting the most out of everybody.
Now, do you think to be a leader that you have to be loud about it, or have you seen guys that were quiet leaders?
I think you can lead from a lot of different ways, and there's a lot of people that lead by example, and there's a lot of people that lead, with fire and brimstone, and they, are loud and all that kind of stuff. And then there's just ways of being a leader without even people knowing it. Is people just know who you are, your integrity, your character, and what you're doing in the off time. People would see me in the meeting room at a certain time and be like, man, I know Trev's in there working hard for us. And it kind of permeates through a organization. And I think that, as a quarterback, obviously you have a big responsibility, but I think everybody does in that way. Everybody can be a leader in their own right. And like I said earlier, it's just about influence. And how are you influencing? Is your Mike linebacker, is he influencing the guy behind him to where if he would go down that, there's not too much of a drop off and we have people believing in everything what we're doing.
All right. The 2015, go ahead,
I got
Steve.
a question. That kind of ties into this. And I kind of actually just thought of this, and I want to ask this question because I don't know the answer to this at all. Usually I know the answer to questions that I ask because I try and research, unlike my colleague, Mike Goodpaster.
Whatever.
What goes on in a locker room at halftime? All we see is guys walking in the huddle, some girl with a microphone sticking a face in the head coach for 10 minutes, and he's giving a stupid answer. And then they go in. Do you guys break it down? Do you get yelled at? Do you methodically leadership now? Because now you're having a bad first half. Are you on the hot seat, or are you just methodically thinking about how to retool at halftime? How does halftime work in professional football?
Yeah, and that's an important part of leadership, and I think it's a good question to piggyback off what we were talking about. It's really about what does the team need right now. If it's an attitude or effort sort of thing, then yeah, I think you need to get in people's face and you need to yell a little bit and kind of question people's, how bad do you want to be here? Are you sure we're here? Are we in this together? What's going on? But where if we're just not executing, then it's just about making the proper adjustments and making sure that we know the details of what we're trying to exactly do. Maybe plays that we've set up in the first half that not necessarily worked, but are going to help us in the second half. And to just say, hey, we need to calm down, stick with the plan, don't flinch. There's really a lot of different ways to go about it, but it's all about taking the temperature of the locker room, knowing exactly what the team is, where we're at during the game, the things that have happened, and the things that we need to do moving forward. And that's really what it's all about.
And that seems like it'd be really tough because let's say you're having where you've thrown 3 picks in the first half. Now you got to go in there and you got to write yourself but you've also got to write the team too. And that's got to be really tough for a quarterback or a leader to do in a football game. You're playing poorly, but you know that you have to write yourself first, then get the team right all in 15 minutes.
Yeah, but again, it's just about understanding what you can do moving forward. The things that have happened in the first half, maybe it didn't go so well, but you've got to understand that it's about the adjustments you make from there moving forward. You can't do anything from the past. I mean, I've been a part of games where we've gone into a locker room, down 21, down 24 at halftime. Just things are not going well. I mean, shoot, against Hamilton, maybe third to last game of the year, we're down 22-6 with 2.5 minutes left in the second quarter, and everybody's looking at each other like, are we about to get beat down by 30? And as a leader, that's where it's important for you to look everybody in the eye and let them know, like, hey, we're going to make this happen, but we're going to do it together. This isn't going to happen in one drive. We just need to just keep chopping wood, keep understanding that what our plan is. We just got to stick with it. Don't flinch, and just understand that this is going to happen throughout the course of the next 32 minutes, 30 minutes if you're at halftime, and that you can't panic, because at that time, if you start panicking in a team game, especially as a leader, that's going to permeate as well. So everything you do as a leader is going to permeate through the entire team.
Anything else?
Right.
Well, I didn't know if you were going to ask.
Well, no, I think he answered my question, but he answered my question. I just never really gave a lot of thought. I mean, I would assume the offense goes to one side of the room, the defense goes to the other side. You guys all have your separate meetings and take things out. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not like you're all
unless it's an attitude or effort thing, then you need to pull the entire team together, and maybe if you feel like it's a critical moment where everybody needs to hear a certain message, then at halftime I've called the team into the center and said, hey, just listen to me real quick, give me 30 seconds, and I've done that. But as the question about if you're worrying about like if you're about to get benched or not, you really can't go there mentally. If you go there mentally, you're already defeated.
Yeah, and 2015 in the preseason, the Argonauts announced that Ricky Ray is going to miss most of the season. You're the starting quarterback now. You want to take us through that thought process where you've went through all this to get to this point. Now you have that opportunity.
Yeah, they just told me it was going to be, even going into the first game, they told me I needed to be a bridge for 2 to 3 games for Ricky to come back. And then he had a slight setback. I mean, I want to say like maybe even the first week of the season, and where they thought it was going to be 6 weeks. And so I'm like, I just got to get us through 6 games. But really my mindset was to just take it one game at a time, to just prepare my butt off, just be ready to play each and every week, each and every play, and give my team the best opportunity to win that week, and then put us in the best position we could to make the run once Ricky came back. And then it became apparent to me that they were going to stick with me for the most of the year. And, for me, it was just about up to that point. I just spent 5 to 6 years, grinding to get to the point where I could get an opportunity. And so up to that point, I was just playing. My goal was just to play well enough, to hang around long enough so I would get an opportunity. And I had put myself in position of that. And all the work I'd done prior to that led me to be ready for the opportunity. And that's really what it's about, is just being ready for the opportunity, because if you're not, then, obviously you're going to start back at square one. And so I just tried to carry myself like a franchise quarterback from the time I came up to the CFL, and, tried to do that for 4 years. And so once you do that for a certain amount of time, you can start believing it in your mind, and then you can start to prepare like that, play like that, and hopefully hit the ground running when you do get an opportunity.
All right, so in the NFL or American football, you're playing in the States in college. You play arena football. Then you go to the CFL. So you've seen kind of every extreme there. What do you think is the biggest factor in being a successful quarterback north of the border?
I know north of the border, up in the CFL, in the NFL, you can hide a quarterback that's struggling for a day with the run game. You can do a lot of things to neutralize somebody that's struggling throwing the ball or having a tough day. But in the CFL, you really can't hide that. You can't hide somebody that struggles throwing the football, because it's 2 downs and then you have to punt. So you have to be able to throw the football. And the field's wider, the field's longer. And so to be up in the CFL, you've got to be accurate. And if you're if you can't throw the football, it's going to be really tough. But more than anything, you've got to be able to adapt and learn, especially if you're coming from the United States, because of the extra man. There's 12 guys. There's all these different types of motion. And with the extra DB / linebacker, or wherever they would put him, there's, geometrically more coverages that teams can play. And so you've got to be able to learn fast, adapt, and just understand where you're at.
Now, how difficult is it to learn to read those coverages after being in the States? Is it something that's fairly simple? You can get it as just an added guy, or is this more complicated than people would think?
A lot of times it's more complicated than people think because, like I said, there's an extra dude. And so sometimes it's just like down south, except for they'll add somebody that's kind of a rat or a robber. But then there's other times where it'll just be like down south where it's cover 3, but there's a robber in the middle. Or robber in the middle, or there's cover 2 and there's a robber in the middle, or they can play certain coverages that you can't down south because you don't have the extra guy. And even when you get down to 3-man fronts and you have 9 people in coverage, it gets even more. And so it's tough because especially you get into second and 14, it's just like third and 14 teams would be 3-man rush and drop 9 in coverage, and it gets kind of wild back there. But once you kind of get the hang of it, and if you love football, you won't have a tough time adjusting to it because it's just so fun to learn something new. And then once you kind of watch 11-man football, just like recently I've been watching some NFL film on the Chiefs and Patriots and some on the Colts and stuff. And so it's so simple. It seems so simple, but I know it's not because the NFL is a very complex system, defensively most of the teams across the league, but it makes 11-man ball seem more simple.
How about this? When you look at the CFL and the history of quarterbacks going from the CFL or the NFL to the CFL or vice versa, you've had a lot of guys that were highly successful coming from the CFL to the NFL. The guys like the Warren Moon, Jeff Garcia, all these guys. And you've had guys go from the NFL to the CFL. A lot of times that doesn't work out. Guys like, this is way before your time, but Vince Ferragamo. He takes the Rams to Super Bowl 14. The next year, he decides to go to Montreal. He lasts 4 or 5 games, throws like a bazillion interceptions, and comes back home. So the question is, I would think this prepares you if you want to come back. Do you have any interest in playing in the NFL? And I only ask that because I know when you're growing up, in Ohio, you're thinking about being a Cleveland Brown or a Cincinnati Bengal. I joke. Nobody thinks about that. But you know what I mean.
Hey, I'm a Bengals fan. Be careful now.
Really? Trevor, I love you.
I was, man. I know you guys remember Jeff Blake and Carl Pickens.
Trevor, don't start.
I interviewed Jeff Blake like 2 years ago. He's a great guy. I'm a huge Bengals fan. I had season tickets since like forever. And Steve always gives me a hard time about it because he's a Colts fan. And I always tell him that's Baltimore's team. Get your own. But, yeah, and Carl Pickens was a bad dude. But is there any interest in possibly coming back down?
It's strange because, like you said, I grew up seeing myself like being an NFL quarterback. I didn't know who the Ottawa Redblacks, nobody did until 2014 for that matter, but I didn't know who the Toronto Argonauts were until 2012. And I had a good buddy play for them in 2011, so I did know about them before that, but I didn't know anything about the CFL. So my dreams growing up were to be an NFL guy, and my dreams have kind of changed to be a multiple, Grey Cup winner as a starter and, do all sorts of things up in the CFL. But, if an NFL team would call, it'd be fun to kind of entertain that. And I feel like I could play in the NFL, but again, like, you just never know until you get in a situation, but it'd be sure fun to try again. But, I wouldn't know if a team would even take a shot on me with being 32 years old at this point. So I'm not really sure, but I sure as heck love the CFL. I love playing there. I have a lot of goals and aspirations to achieve while I'm up in the CFL, but I guess I'd cross that bridge if a team would call me in the NFL. But it'd be a lot of fun.
Well, I could tell you this: the Bengals are rolling with Driscoll and Tom Savage, so I'm pretty sure you can still play in the NFL. After the great, you had a great
question.
Go ahead.
I played a little bit of basketball in Europe right out of college, probably before you were born, Trevor. And we had a limit of like 2 Americans per team. Does Canadian football have rules as to how many Americans can play on a team, or is it just fair game? Whoever they can get up there to play plays, or do they have to have a certain amount of Canadians playing, or any kind of rules like that up there?
Yeah, I believe there's a certain number of Canadians that have to be on the active roster. I think it maybe is 21 or 22 of the 46, and then the rest are allowed to be Americans. And starters, you have to have 7 Canadian starters of the 24. And I know that sounds like I just made a mistake, but we have 12 starters on each side of the ball, so we have to have 7 Canadians of the 24 starters. And then from there, I believe, I think there's maybe 26 Americans allowed, or I don't know the exact numbers, but I know it's somewhere around there.
All right, Steve, anything else?
Yeah, and you go up there basically and play on what we would call here a green card, basically.
You work permit. You go up there, you get a work permit.
That allows you. I think we call it a green card. The Canadian calls it a work permit or something. But so you're just basically a foreigner going in under an American passport and playing up there. And I mean, do you have established residency up there? Or do you just kind of go up there for the season and then come back to the United States and hang out here?
Yeah, I typically come back for the off seasons. My wife, big family first. I'm a big family person, so we're around our family for a good chunk of the off season. I move around to train a little bit, but for the most part, we're here in Ohio with our families. And those Canadian winters, I don't know that you want to be up there.
Steve couldn't handle.
What's more fun? What's more fun? I mean, you played both. What's more fun, NFL or Canadian? I mean, if your field's bigger, your end zone's bigger. You got more players. You can move your receivers in motion more. What's more fun to play?
Ah, man, it's tough, man, because you grew up your whole life playing 11-man football, and so it makes a hell of a lot of sense, and it's a lot of fun to do that. But those guys moving around and all the different formations and motions and shifts that you can do. Actually, good guy to talk to would be Andy Reid. The reason I say that is because I've heard he watches quite a bit of CFL film and uses some of the shifts and motions that we use to kind of dictate coverage and mess people up. And so I don't know what would be more fun. I enjoy both. I'm just a football junkie, man. I'm obsessed with the game of football, and so I just love football in general. It'd be tough to say.
I think the two coaches that stand out to me are the Chiefs and the Patriots, because I think the Chiefs and the Patriots kind of play with the motion and getting the matchups. I think they both play a little bit like CFL teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does seem that way when you watch them on film, especially the Chiefs. If you watch them, they do a lot of shifts and stuff, and they end up getting people running scot-free. That's where you see Tyreek Hill running past people, one, because he's the fastest dude ever, but they do a lot of scheme things to make him get in good matchups.
All right, Steve, sorry about that.
Yeah, and I was just curious because you guys only have 3 downs, right? And that's the big thing about the CFL as opposed to the NFL. You only have 3 downs to work with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, what's your ratio of pass to run? I mean, it's got to be completely different than the NFL. Because do you have time to even try and run a ball? Or
we run the ball, but like I was saying earlier, it's tough to kind of hide a quarterback that can't throw the football in the CFL. That's kind of the reason is it's a lot more heavy with passing. And, but there is, I mean, we run the ball maybe, between 15 and 23 times a game. If you're getting 20 carries in the NFL, you're getting a lot. That's a heavy workload, and you're running maybe 60 plays. So it'd be hard to put a percentage on it, but I know there's definitely a lot more heavy runs or passing than runs up in the CFL, whereas in the NFL, it's pretty balanced.
What do you think, like 70-30, 75-25?
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah.
Roughly maybe 2/3 of the time you're throwing the football, or maybe a little more.
All right.
Some teams sometimes running backs will have 8 carries in a game, so it's not out of the norm.
Yeah, but Steve, it's kind of like the NFL. If you could run the ball successfully, you're a lot better off. There's guys like Andrew Harris, guys up there that are great running backs that make everything much easier on the quarterbacks too.
Absolutely. But I always feel like, and I look at I'll just use my own team, the Colts. It's like Andrew throws a 20-yard pass, we get a nice first down, and they hand off to Marlon Mack, and you get 2 yards. It's like, okay, you just pissed away an entire down. I mean, you knew what was going to happen. They're expecting you to run. and you just now you're playing Canadian football. Now you're down to 3 downs because it happens so invariably in the NFL that they think, okay, I'm going to get conservative now and be Vince Lombardi, and I'm going to just try and run up the middle, and it doesn't work in the NFL. And so I kind of like that concept of more like, no, we have to throw the ball first down more. Then sometimes I think the NFL just doesn't do that enough. But what do I know?
we gotta get you up to a game, man. We gotta get you up to a game. If you don't come up, just come up, watch a few of them, man. Maybe I've never seen somebody that came to a CFL game and said they didn't have a good time. So.
Well,
Steve, I remember
Steve has a hard time finding it on ESPN. So
I'm telling you, I'm in California, and when Mike said, because our website has a huge presence with the CFL. We do a couple of great big shows that draw a lot of people listening, and we've got a quarterback like you coming on talking CFL. I started looking for Canadian Football League games out here, and I'm like, Mike, when's the Grey Cup? Because it was last week. I said, well, how did we do
No,
it?
it was a month ago, Steve.
Okay. A month ago, okay. And Trevor lost. So it's like, I started looking for CFL games out here. I don't know if LA has a different schedule on ESPN than everybody else, but I couldn't find the Grey Cup. And, I'm probably looking in the wrong place.
Well,
but I remember when I was young watching it.
You're looking in the wrong month, too. So.
Yeah, June, July, August is when
football or Canadian League football. You had one of the two. So.
Yeah, the great thing about the CFL is you can start watching football in June that way.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, all right. You leave Toronto because, let's face it, they're not getting rid of Ricky Ray. You end up in Ottawa. What's your take on Ottawa? It looks to me like they have a great fan base. I think it's out west in Canada, so you get to ride horses and stuff, right?
We're east. We're about 3 or 4 hours northeast of Toronto.
Oh, okay. I was close. Not really. But, yeah, I mean, Ottawa, the team's been there for just a handful of years, and they've had a lot of success. A lot of that was due to you and Henry Burris. You get to win a Grey Cup. You backed up Henry Burris there. What's the experience in Ottawa been like for you?
It's been a lot of growing because it's a lot different. You see the game through a different lens, and you approach things quite a bit differently when you're a franchise guy as opposed to a backup, and you learn a lot more because you're the guy that's talking in the meetings. You're the one that's making sure everything's good with, and you're kind of like you said earlier as a quarterback, whether you like it or not, you're a leader, and so it's a lot of personal growth, and it's a lot of challenging things that happen to you, and it's one of those deals where it's best to kind of just stay away from the social media stuff as well, because there's a ton of opinions, and no matter how well you do, there's always going to be negative stuff, and so you've got to understand what's important to let filter into your brain, what's good to just kind of just leave away,
Yeah, and this season, I mean, your conference championship game, you threw 6 touchdown passes. You'd been to the Grey Cup before, but what was it like being the man who was behind the trigger?
It was a blast. Obviously, this was my second full year as being, the bona fide starter on a team, and each year I've been the guy. I've learned more and more, and each year you think like, man, there's no way next year could be as big of a learning year as this was, and every single year it's been more of a learning experience, and so it's kind of fun. Football is just such a great teacher, and it's a great challenger for you in life. And I've just learned so much through the game, and I'm just thankful for it because I've learned so much that, someday when I'm a coach, I'll be able to kind of pass that knowledge down and be able to use the experiences I've been through to help my teams.
Are you signed with Ottawa for next year yet, or are you still kind of a free agent?
I'm a free agent in terms of when February would get here, but I would hope that I would stay in Ottawa, obviously, but nobody really wants to leave the city they're in. I mean, there are a few times, but kind of just feel like a sense of unfinished business. So hopefully we can work it out with Ottawa, which I feel confident we will. It's just a matter of when, or if we pull the trigger. I just kind of let my agent kind of deal with that. But obviously there's mutual interest on both sides, and I love the city, and the organization hopes to have me back. So it seems like a good fit. So hopefully we can work it out. But in the meantime, I'm just kind of hanging out, working out, and staying ready.
All right. The big question I think that's on Steve's mind is this: why haven't the Bengals gotten rid of Marvin Lewis yet?
I don't know, man. He's been a successful coach. He's done a good job, but it's tough, man. The NFL is kind of a fickle business, you know.
So
it's kind of nice that they've kept him around, but who knows?
Yeah. Who are the quarterbacks you'd like to watch play?
I love watching. I love watching Mahomes this year, but I love watching Aaron Rodgers. Just the fan in me does. But I love watching Andrew Luck, Tom Brady, and the guy I study the most is Drew Brees. He's just surgical with the way he uses his eyes, shoulder manipulation. He's so accurate, and he's just truly a great guy. A guy that I see as a role model, and a guy I look up to quite a bit, and just love the way he loves his teammates and the way he leads.
All right, Steve. Any NFL things?
Yeah, I got a question, and this is because I went through this because I played quarterback in high school. I was 6'8", and my coach had a 6'5" quarterback before. I had never thrown a football before my sophomore year of high school. And he turned me into a quarterback, and we went 10-0 the first year, 9-1, 9-1. But I also had a son who was 6'4", and it was my life stream to have him be an NFL quarterback. What should parents do with their kids? Because everybody in the world has a Mike Goodpaster, some guru out there that'll charge you $300 an hour to come to your high school and throw at your kids.
$300 an hour, Steve.
And,
jeez.
Well, some exorbitant fee. We used Darren Slack out of he was a CFU, Central Florida quarterback, and we went with his.
I went through his camp before.
Zero motion system. As a dad, if you think your kid's, how do you progress your kid into the position of quarterback? That's the hardest. I think it's the hardest position in sports to play. And how did you go about it? What would you suggest that we would tell our listeners if you had a young son and you thought he had the aptitude to do it? How do you go about that process?
I think it's just about allowing the kid to show you that he's interested in that. And I think as long as you know he's interested in that and that's what he aspires to be, it's kind of a telltale sign to help him out and push him that way. But I think that, he'll learn that through osmosis if he sees, your interest. And if that happens, then you can kind of push him that way and send him to who you think you should send him to. And from there, it's just about teaching them the game. And if they start to love the game, then they'll progress and they'll want to get better at it. But I just don't think you should try and force a square peg in a round hole. And at that point in time, it won't really work that well.
Is it a good or necessary investment to buy or hire one of these, Mike Goodpasters, these quarterback gurus?
Remember, I'm here, Trevor. So you say yes.
It's really just about who you trust and who you think is going to help your kid. And if the Mike Goodpasters of the world are going to be those guys to help them, then sure, it's worth the investment. But I know there's a lot of times where you send them to people and they come back and they don't learn a bunch. But it's really up to the person that's going to train with that person. So if they go train with Mike Goodpaster, they can come back and say, oh, that was cool. Okay, let's see how I can do now. Or you can apply the drills day after day after day. You're never going to fix yourself or make yourself a way better quarterback in one day. You got to keep applying.
There's a lot of guys out there that, don't know what they're doing. And there just is. I mean, Jeff Christensen, who's Mahomes' coach?
I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, he had the son actually that played, I think, right?
Jeff actually played in the NFL in the 80s, early 80s. He was a backup with the Bengals. But I know from talking to him, he gets the same thing where you'll get kids that – I used to just look for high school kids, try to get them to college. But now anymore, I used to not take like 5th and 6th, 4th graders, but I do now just because of the simple fact if you get them there, they're not as screwed up as they are when they're a sophomore and they come to you. And it's hard to fix muscle memory a lot of times when stuff's been ingrained wrong for almost a decade. I can hear your kids, Trevor.
What's that?
We can hear your kids playing. It's better than Steve's dogs barking.
Oh yeah. My wife had to leave, so I'm on daddy duty now. She had to leave at 12:30. I didn't know how.
Well, how about this
There
then?
you go.
Let's go ahead and wrap it up. Steve, do you have a final question or anything for Trevor?
I got one more question. Patrick Mahone, is he the real deal or is he a one-hit wonder?
He's the real deal. He's fun to watch.
You think so?
I know yeah, I do.
He's fun to watch,
think
no
he may
doubt.
run into some trouble at some point. He can be a little reckless, but man, he's a stud, man, and his ceiling's amazing. He's in the right system too. Andy Reid's done a good job with him, and he's ultra talented. He's awesome.
All right, Trevor, we want to thank you for coming on the show today. We'll let you go so you can take care of your kids, but we really appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, guys.
All right. Thanks, Trevor.
Yep, take care.
All right. Steve, who's our guest tomorrow?
All right. Our guest tomorrow, what is tomorrow? Friday or Thursday?
Tomorrow's Friday Football Frenzy with...
Friday Football Frenzy. We allegedly, and I say allegedly because this guy's a good friend of mine, and he can be a little flaky at times, but we have Pete Quinn. Pete Quinn is the voice of Purdue football for the last 20-something years, has covered the Big Ten extensively, been to every stadium in and around the country, followed Purdue religiously, was a great captain for the Purdue team in his day, some 20-something, 25 years ago, and played with some of the best quarterbacks that, Purdue is often considered the cradle of quarterbacks, and has snapped the ball as a center, and has some great insight. We're going to have him do the football frenzy and pick the NFL games. I think we're down to really only 5 or 6 important
We'll pick
NFL
them all,
games.
though, because we're at like week 16.
We'll pick them all, right,
Nobody's
but
ever come on this
we'll
show
talk,
and
and then-
beat us. Nobody's beat us. Not even Ed
Right.
Biles, who talked a bunch of crap. And we'll have Ed back because he wants a rematch.
So
too.
we're undefeated, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we're
And
undefeated.
then, I thought it'd be a great opportunity for Pete to kind of preview some of the later bowl games here coming up now that some of the more relevant ones are starting to pop up. We're heading into January 1, then, of course, we're heading into December 29th of the playoff games and things. So get Pete's opinion on those games and see what he thinks, how things are going to go, how my Fighting Irish are going to win the national championship. After Brian Kelly's been second time now named Coach of the Year by another bread company sponsored poll or something like that. I don't know, beer company, whoever. But so yeah, we have Pete Quinn tomorrow. Be fun.
What's your take? Did you hear the news about Josh Gordon?
No, what happened to Josh Gordon? I
Josh
have not looked
Gordon today tweeted that he was leaving the Patriots because he needs to get help. Why is that funny? He has mental problems, and what the hell? And then we got ex-NFL wide receiver Dorial Green Beckham was arrested with a pound of marijuana today too. And I bet he wasn't just casually using that. But the Josh Gordon thing, I think it's a shame. But the biggest question here is now, Gronk doesn't look like he usually does. You're taking Josh Gordon away from this offense. I think that it's pretty much official right now that the Patriots are in trouble.
Well, but I mean, in all fairness to the Patriots, didn't we all know this day was coming, Mike? I mean, it's not like they're at the top of their game. I mean, Brady's 40 years old. Belichick's got to be tired of doing what he's doing every year in, year out to coach at the level of intensity he coaches at. I mean, is this really a surprise to you that we're seeing that now basically what's happening is the Patriots are becoming mortals? They're still winning games, but they're not unbeatable like they used to be. Is this surprising you? Josh Gordon, I didn't know about. I have not, because I'm 3 hours behind you, so I haven't really had a chance to really scour.
Well, I think when you take Josh Gordon away, I think that it does limit the prospects for the Patriots. I mean, because if you look at it in the AFC, the Chargers and Chiefs are teams that look like the two best teams right now. But the history of the Chargers and Chiefs tells us at some point something bad's going to happen to both of those teams. And when you look at the Steelers and the Ravens, neither one of them look that good. So the Houston Texans look like they're a year away. The Colts look like they're a year away. So I think if you would have had a healthy Josh Gordon here, there may have been one more Super Bowl run there. But without him now, I just don't know if they got the weapons to pull this off because defensively they're not that good. So they're going to have to score points.
Yeah, and I don't know if they're not that good because of Josh Gordon's personal issues or if they're not that good because Brady's just 40 years old. I mean, I don't know the answer
when you
to that.
watch Brady,
you're the football guru.
It's not like he's throwing interceptions all over the place. I mean,
no, but if you watch Brady play, he just seems like he's in a half a gear slower than he's been in the past.
But think of it like this.
Maybe I'm just.
I think this. I think that Rob Gronkowski is a full gear slower than what he was.
I think Gronkowski's.
He's done.
I don't think he's effective. He's done. I don't think he's effective anymore.
I think he might be able to be effective in a game or two this year, but overall for his career, I think he's pretty much done. And if you remember last year after the Super Bowl, the rumors were he was going to retire. He didn't. I think they talked him back into coming back and playing. And when you look at that, I'm thinking this. I don't think Brady looks that bad. He does look a little off, but it could just be because the people around him are a little bit off to what they
didn't have the weapons, right? He didn't have the weapons he usually has, the Wes Welkers and those guys, and the guys, the Edelmans, the guys he used to always have. I don't know how many of those guys are even still on.
Well, he's got Edelman there, but Edelman's a slot receiver.
He's it, isn't it? Isn't Edelman all they really got? They brought the kid over from Cleveland. How did that kid ever turn out? The one that Cleveland cut loose.
That was Josh Gordon, Steve.
Oh, that was Josh Gordon.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. See, that's why I don't follow the Patriots that much. I mean, I don't know. I mean, what it says to me is it makes the Colts look like geniuses for taking Frank Reich, as their head coach. So.
Well, not necessarily, because Josh McDaniels is stuck in a situation with old, washed-up guys. So, could be a little bit different.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other question is Josh McDaniels. I mean, I know we've talked about him being the heir apparent to the Patriots. Is he stale along with the rest of everybody as they get older too? Does the upper management? What's the owner's name? Gillette. Is that his name?
Robert Kraft.
What's the guy's name?
Robert Kraft.
Yeah, he owns Gillette.
I think it's pretty much, unless somebody else grabs him away, he will go down with the Patriot ship. McDaniels will. After Belichick leaves, McDaniels will take over. He'll never win anything, and he'll get fired,
right.
And he'll go somewhere and be Hugh Jackson's offensive coordinator.
Yeah. I think that's a move that when Belichick goes away, it's like you kind of need to just retool entirely. It's kind of like what Indiana did with Bob Knight for so long.
Well, and the thing is this, most teams, when they lose their head coach, and he's a legend like that, Alabama football was not the same for 20 years until they got, Nick Saban.
Indiana basketball was the same way.
The Green Bay Packers. Vince Lombardi left.
UCLA.
Yeah, Green Bay Packers, Vince Lombardi. I don't think UCLA as much, because if you remember, UCLA the year after Wooden was in the Final Four, and then they played for
Larry
national...
Brown. Larry Brown took him to the...
No, it was Gene Bartow in 1976.
Was it Bartow?
UAB team he played, yeah. But then Bartow got out of there, and then in 1980, Larry Brown took him to the championship. They lost to Louisville, and then in the 90s was that Larry Farmer took him to the NCAA championship game. Then they made it again in like 07 or 08, I think. So they haven't been as bad off as teams like Alabama or the Green Bay Packers. The Packers lose Lombardi in, 67, 68. They make the playoffs in 72, and they don't make the playoffs again until 82. They had a rough time. But usually when you have a legendary coach and he leaves, things fall apart.
I just think maybe it's a mental block that I have, or maybe a lot of football people have, is it's still very difficult to me in a crunch game situation in a playoff game to bet against Belichick and Brady, even though it's probably a better bet today than it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I still have a hard time thinking I'm going to bet against Belichick and Brady in those crunch situations.
Yeah, and it's always going to be hard to bet against a guy like that.
Yeah.
You know what? And this is the thing, though. In 1980, when Muhammad Ali fought Larry Holmes, the odds were only 7-5 in Holmes' favor, because it was still hard to bet against Ali, because hadn't seen him get totally taken apart yet because he was old, but then he got totally taken apart because he was old. All right, real quick, let's do a prediction. Tonight, Madison Square Garden, Number 1, Duke. Well, they should be number 1, because really they should. I agree with you, Steve. But I got Kansas there just because it's better for the show. We got Duke, I think the best team in the country. They will play 12th ranked Texas Tech. Texas Tech is undefeated. Can Texas Tech play with them? Can Texas Tech beat them, Steve?
I don't think they can in New York. I think that's like home court for Duke. They play as many games in New York as they do anywhere. And no, I don't think they. I'm going to stick with my theory that I think the only team that can beat Duke right now is Duke. They beat themselves. Texas Tech will win the game, but I don't think anybody has the manpower to man up and play Duke for 40 minutes and beat them head up. I don't think so. But that's why we roll the ball.
The interesting thing about this game is this: I don't think Duke's played a team defensively nearly as good as Texas Tech. Texas Tech is a team that hasn't given up more than 65 points in a game this year. Duke is averaging 93. Yeah. I think Texas Tech is the best defensive team they've faced. You got Jarrett Culver, who will be one of the best players on the floor for Texas Tech. He's got to have a huge game. But I think when I look at this, I think this is a game that's going to tell us a lot, because when I've watched Duke, they've looked kind of like a team of individuals. And if they play that way against Texas Tech, they will lose or the game will be close. If they come out and blitz Texas Tech, I think everybody in the ACC is in for a long season.
Yeah, I agree with you in the fact that at the times I've seen Duke play, I do not feel that they have played as a great team. They played as a team of great individuals. And I do think that's an issue with Duke right now. Yeah. But I think they're young.
And I think against a defensive team like Texas Tech, if they play that way, you'll know, because Texas Tech will be in the middle of that game.
Yeah.
But also, I want to remind people that tonight at 9 o'clock, we'll have Inside Boxing Weekly with me, Jeremiah, and John. Make sure you listen to that live at 9 o'clock Eastern. We're going to wrap it up. Follow Steve Risley at SRisley34. Follow The Grueling Truth at Grueling Truth or at Survive the Magic. We will be back tomorrow, of course, with our Friday Football Friendly and the voice of the Purdue Boilermakers. Pete Quinn, correct?
Correct.
I am an Indiana fan, so I'm learning that. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. I want to remind you can hear everything on The Grueling Truth on Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Trevor Harris, Steve Risley, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.